should stop illegal cabinet infomercials. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, the rhinoceros is thick-skinned. The dictionary defines a rhinoceros, shown on the slide, as a large, powerful, herbivorous, thick-skinned perissodactyl mammal with two horns. Thus, a rhinoceros is a template for cabinet members and other executive officials who use public funds or gifts from so-called friends to campaign for next year's elections. They are all thick-skinned and should be shot on sight. DBM should not allow ad expenses. Last May, the Department of Budget and Management issued the, quote, fiscal year 2010 National Budget Call, unquote. Under the heading, Maintenance and Other Operating Expenses, the DBM allows this item in its budget call, quote, advertising expenses, period, cost of advertisement in newspapers, magazines, television, radio, and other forms of media, unquote. We in the Senate do not see advertising expenses as a line item in the annual budget because it is hidden under the general item MOOE. Dati linalagay yan para masuri sana na makasapi ng Kongreso. Ngayon, tinatago nila. Hindi nila pinapakita sa atin. Kaya basahin mo yung napakakapal na budget, hindi mo makita na meron pala silang outlay for annual advertising expenses. This is why cabinet members routinely abuse this advertising expense account every 3 years when an election approaches. Without legislative oversight, they shamelessly help themselves to these public funds on the pretext that they are conducting information campaigns about their departments. Slide 1, please. Next slide, please. The COA audit of advertising expenses. Greed for and abuse of public funds are proved by the figures from the Commission on Audit submitted to me as chair of the Economic Affairs Committee on 14 August 2009 during a hearing by Chair Reynaldo Villar. In 2008-9, certain cabinet members and other executive officials prematurely campaigning for the 2010 elections used public funds totaling, in round figures, 118 million pesos. Iyan. Kung i-total mong 208 to 209, magiging 118 yan. This is the list of cabinet members and other executive officials arranged by the amount of government funds spent for infomercials for the 2 years of 208 to 209, arranged in the dishonor roll. Ayan. In that slide, look, these are our taxpayers' money, ng ating pera sa ating kaban. Nag-away-away tayo sa Senado kung saan kukunin ang pera, especially during budget hearings, dahil gusto natin mas malaki education or ang health o ano pa. Ito, gumagastos ng 28.3 million at sige pang gumagastos hanggang ngayon, even as I speak. Pasayaw-sayaw pa, puti ng buhok niya. Hindi ba nakakahiya yan? Nawawalan ka ng respeto sa ganung uri ng opisyal sa publiko? These are the figures of the COA. Sa 209 lang, kasi ng 208, ang ginastos nila 18 million lang. Ngayong 209 na, just in the first semester, meaning to say the first half, gumastos na, lumobo na ng 100.4 million. Minamadali at minamalaki nila ang bayad ng kanilang mga infomercials dahil palapit na ang halalan. Susunod na taon na eh. Ayan, nakikita nyo sa slide. These executive officials can expect to stay in office until the end of November, the deadline for filing certificates of candidacy when they will be considered resigned. Thus, unless we in the Senate will warn them to stop using public funds, they are likely to intensify their infomercials, and it will be likely that they will incur more expenses, maybe another 100 million pesos. Their total greed and abuse might then reach a grand total of 218 million pesos of public funds used for electioneering. Kamukha ng sinabi ng astronaut, one small step to the Senate, a giant leap in greed and abuse. Kung hindi ba mga ganit at abusado itong mga ito? No legal basis for infomercials. There is no specific legal basis for TV infomercials and other campaign materials which feature the head of agency. The law merely provides that, quote, public officials shall provide information on their policies and procedures, unquote. This taken from RA number 6713, also known as the Code of Conduct for Public Officials. But this provision should be read in the context of the Constitution's Bill of Rights, which provides that, quote, the right of the people to information on matters of public concern shall be recognized, unquote. In other words, if a person goes to a government agency and requests information about policies and procedure, then the agency has a legally demandable duty to provide the information unless it might endanger national security. The right is given to the citizen, not to the agency. Maghintay muna sila, natanungin sila. Ano nga pinagsasabi nila? Wala namang makatuturan. Ano namang kwenta kung sabihin mo sa akin na meron ng bagong desk for women and children sa police station, matagal na yon. Bakit? Nung pinasa natin yan dito sa Kongreso, ba't di siya kumuha ng infomercial to inform the public because it was a new law? Wala naman siyang ginawa. Ngayon, bida siya. Ewan ko bakit. Merong ina, merong anak, nakita nila may babaeng pulis na pwede nilang puntahan dahil may problema sila at bigla na lang may puno ng kahoy. Possibly the only agency required by the Constitution to inform the public is the DOH, Department of Health, under the provision that the state shall instill health consciousness among the people. Pero dapat ang DOH ay maglalabas lang ng itong napakamahal ng mga TV commercial bayad ng ating buwis kung halimbawa, merong contagious disease. Bakit kailangan lumabas ang health secretary? Bakit contagious disease ba siya? But even assuming that infomercials have a specific legal basis, there is no legal basis for the appearance of the head of agency in a state-funded infomercial, particularly when he's planning to run in the elections. I challenge any of these executive officials to cite any such specific law. There is none. There is no legal basis for infomercials. They are illegal. Timing is dead giveaway. If the cabinet officials are merely piously discharging their non-existent duty to expose themselves to the public, why did they start only in 208? And why are they going full speed in 209, the year before the elections? Why didn't they start publicizing their alleged pious duty to appear in paid media, especially TV, when they assumed office many years ago? Gentlemen of the cabinet, explain the timing of your highly paid TV infomercials. Bakit noon, kung talagang sa tingin ninyo kailangan sabihan ang publiko tungkol sa bagay ng departamento, bakit hindi po ginawa nung na-appoint ka? Bakit ngayon lang napalapit ng halalan? Kaya dyan pa lang sa timing, kitang-kita mo na ang kanilang balak talaga ay na makahanap sila ng butas sa batas. At gusto nila maging mambabatas sila. Hindi pa nga sila na upo sa Senado, sa House of Representatives, sa abusado na. Ano pa kaya kung umupo sila dito? Infomercials are unnecessary. This is the ruling of the Commission on Audit. Infomercials violate COA Circular number 94-001 dated 1994, which states, Section 16, grounds for disallowance. All transactions which are irregular, unnecessary, unconscionable, excessive, and extravagant. They have in fact abbreviated this into the acronym IUEE. According to COA, the audit criteria are as follows. Pag nagbigay kasi ang departamento ng listahan ng mga ginastos niya ng perang binigay ng gobyerno sa kanya, tinitingnan ngayon ng COA ang advertising expenses. At maaari lang napayagan ng COA iyon kung iyong paggastos na iyan, dahil pera natin iyon, ay ayon dito sa mga criteria na ito, 4 ito. The information the infomercial should contain information that the public needs to know. Kailangan na ang publiko mismo ang nangangailangan ng impormasyon na iyon. Kung hindi kailangan ng publiko, wala kang kakarapatan na gamitin ang pera ng publiko. That is what the COA tells them. What determines necessity is the public need, not the executive official's political agenda. In their blind ignorance, certain cabinet members keep on chanting the mantra that they need to inform the public. Hindi pa Senate media, palaging gano'n ang sinasabi nitong mga ito. Pag tinanong ninyo, bakit kayo nag-infomercial? Kasi we need to inform the public. Yun ang palagi nilang sagot. Parang mantra. In the optimum, every government agency and every public official has a duty to inform the public, but only if the public asks. Ano ka, sira ulo? Na ikot-ikot ka sa lipunan at sa komunidad mo at magsasalita ka tungkol sa ginagawa ng departamento mo? Hindi. Magtrabaho ka sa lamesa mo sa loob ng opisina mo at ngayon kung may lumapit sa iyo, hindi mo kailangan lituhin ang mamamayan dahil ibig lang sabihin, fixer ka. Nililito nilang mamamayan para makaalok sila, I will fix your problem. Kaya fixer. Gumagawa sila ng problema para mabigyan nila ng lunas ang sariling problema. Yun ang fixing. Kaya, meron tayong mga probisyon sa ating batas na dapat pag nagtanong ang publiko o ang mamamayan, dapat sagutin mo at turuan mo kung anong kailangan gagawin. Yan ang sinasabi ng batas. Kailanman hindi sinabi ng batas na i-advertise mo ang sarili mo or even your department because we have to wait until the public comes to our department. Whoever asked these cabinet members to inflict their grotesque faces on the TV viewing public? Mabuti pa nga makasama nating mga artista dahil hinahanap ng masa. Sino nagsabi nitong mga cabinet members na ito na gustong-gusto ng masa makita ang mga pagbumukha nila? Next criterion. The infomercial should be part of the essential functions of the agency. For example, infomercials on a need-to-know basis could be issued by DOH concerning contagious diseases or by DSWD on emergency assistance for dangerous calamities. Not any function of the agency will justify infomercials, but only an extraordinary function under extraordinary conditions. The infomercial should be essential to the operation of the agency. Yun ang patakaran ng COA. May essential ba doon sa pinanood nyo kanina ng mga infomercials ng cabinet members? Meron bang kailangan malaman ng publiko? Ilang minuto yan. At ang mahal-mahal ng telebisyon, nagsayawan lang ang matandang cabinet member at hindi pa bagay sa ginagawa niya. At may artista pa. Merong professional singer. Next criterion, the infomercial should be authorized by a line item in the budget. And last, the infomercial should have been processed in accordance with RA number 9184. This is the Procurement Act. Next slide. Almost all of the infomercials flunk this fourfold test for legality under COA Circular number 8555A. Expenses for advertisements of anniversaries, etc., in newspapers, TV, or radio, merely for publicity or propaganda purposes are unnecessary and should be disallowed, except when the nature of the agency's mission would require such expenses, as in the case of promotion of trade and business. Here are some COA audit observations on the greed and abuse of executive officials. These are the words of the COA. On 27 February 2008, the COA declared as unnecessary its advertising expenses in the sum of 12.3 million. On 12 March 208, the sum of 21.12 million. And on 24 June 2009, the sum of 18.4 million. No less than 3 times, 3 beses inulit-ulit sa kanya. huwag kang gumastos ng pera ng gobyerno ng ganyang paraan dahil malamang hindi namin i-aprobahan iyan at kailangan ibalik mo yan sa gobyerno. Yan ang mangyayari kasi if the COA disallows your expense. Yung pinanood nyo kanina, wala pa. Yan pa lang, paggawa pa lang ng advertisement. Wala pa yung kwenta doon kung magkano ang binayad niya para ipalabas ng TV station. Pinabayad niya tayo ng kanyang higanting mga poster, pero sobra sa kalahati, litrato niya. Ito, maganda ito, pakinggan nyo ng mabuti. Binati niya ang sarili niya ng happy birthday sa dyaryo at pinabayad niya ang DILG. Sus, my goodness me. Kung hindi ka nga ba naman makahamon ito ng patayan eh. Tapos binabira niya ako sa kolumnista niya na hinabol ko lang daw siya. Sino siya nahabulin kong mag-isa? My goodness, I'm married to one of the most handsome men in the entire country. At sasabihin niya, hinahabol ko siya. Masyado namang narcissistic ito. Akala nila, basta ilagay nila ang presidente, pwede na. The president can appear in public notices or even in these infomercials because according to the principles of international relations, in the entire international community, only the president of the country speaks for the country. No other, unless she has given her authority to that cabinet official, maybe the foreign affairs secretary, to do so. Kaya pwede siya because she becomes a symbol of the country or becomes a symbol of national unity. Ngayon, itong na mga ito, palibhasa, hindi nagbabasa ng batas o baka hindi marunong magbasa. Baka illiterate itong mga cabinet members na ito. Akala nila, basta isama nila si Pangulo sa kanilang mga litrato, pwede na. Hindi. Monopoly. By admitting that public funds were used for these ads, the executive officials are admitting that they are guilty of the election offense of using public funds for electioneering. The Election Code, Section 261, prohibits any person under any guise whatsoever, directly or indirectly, to use public funds for campaigning. Napakaliwanag niyan. Maski estudyante kayo, maski hindi pa kayo umabot ng college, naintindihan ninyo. Maski sinong tao, hindi sinabing kailangan kandidato. Dahil ang kandidato, sabi nila, ay kailangan nag-file muna ng certificate of candidacy. Okay. Sabi ng batas, hindi kailangan na kandidato ka. Maski sinong tao, maski anong paraan, under any guise whatsoever, directly or indirectly. Kaya hindi lang directly, maski indirect way. If you use public funds, you shall be guilty of an election offense. Hindi ba maliwanag yan? Kung makakabasa ka, dapat maintindihan mo. Basta normal lang ang mentalidad mo at hindi ka lang autistic. I charge that all these cabinet members are suffering from narcissism to such an extent that they have now become autistic and should be examined by the Secretary of Health, beginning with himself. Dahil nakalagay maliwanag any person who uses under any guise whatsoever, directly or indirectly, public funds shall be guilty of an election offense. Yan ang problema ng ating bansa dahil binabaluktot natin ang batas para sa ating kapakanan. May just say to those two girls there, will you please stop smiling and looking at your cell phones? If you're not listening to my speech, please step out now. Nakaka-insulto yung ginagawa ninyo sa Senado ng Pilipinas. Seryoso ako dito You are obviously talking something else. Please step out if you are not interested in the proceedings of the Senate. Ads paid by friends constitute indirect bribery. The infomercials of Mr. Puno, Mr. Chodoro, and maybe others purport to be paid by, quote, friends, unquote. If so, the disclaimer in the TV ads constitute an admission of the crime of receiving manifestly excessive gifts as defined by RA number 3019, the Anti-Graft Act. Next slide, please. The rate card of a top TV channel charges 475,000 pesos for every 30 seconds of prime time. Bilangin yung second, ganito, 1, ganito ang pagbilang mo, 1, 100, 2, 100, 3, 100, hanggang umabot ka sa 30 seconds, yan, kalating milyon na. Eh, ilang beses niya, ipaulit-ulit yung infomercial niyang yon of 30 seconds in the course of the day and of the night. It appears that the running time of each executive official, ranked from the longest to the shortest, are as follows. 1 minute, 12 seconds. O, i-multiply mo every 30 seconds by 500,000 or by 500,000. Ilang milyon yun? These government officials are spending taxpayers' money like there is no tomorrow. If, as some ads proclaim, they were paid for by friends, the cost would run to hundreds of millions. Even a gift of 1 million pesos is already considered to be manifestly excessive. We can only calculate that these ad expenses are arrogantly excessive, as in, walang hiyaan na talaga ito. We have been invaded by a herd of rhinoceros that are not only thick-skinned but also dim-witted. They are making public admissions of the prohibited act of accepting a gift which is manifestly excessive. Under the rules implementing the Code of Conduct, which is a law, if convicted, they have to suffer the imprisonment of up to 5 years and disqualification to hold public office. Recommendations. In this speech, I do not include the issue of premature campaigning because I have brought a case to the Supreme Court where it is pending. It is sub judice, and I refrain from discussing it on the merits except to express my humble conviction that certain people are breaking the law against premature campaigns. Here are my recommendations. Recommendation number 1. I appeal to my colleagues in this Senate that when we deliberate on the budget next month, we should abolish appropriations for advertising. Bakit kailangan mag-advertise sila? Maliban lang kako nga, ayon sa saligang batas, ang Department of Health or maybe ang DSWD. Dahil kailangan sa radyo, sabihan mo ang mga may sakit o ang mga napinsala ng mga kalamidad kung saan sila makakakuha ng tulong kaagad. But if we have to keep this line item, we should accompany it with the condition that it should not feature the agency head or any political image or any effort to influence public support for a political candidate. These prohibitions have been adopted by other countries. One example is the Guidelines on Campaign Advertising, dated June 208, by the Australian Government Department of Finance. Another example is an American law that prohibits public officials from using the facilities of public office, directly or indirectly, for the purpose of assisting a campaign for election of any person to any office. Recommendation number 2. I also appeal to my colleagues in this august chamber that in the 2010 budget, we should amend Section 59, the, quote, general provision on the use of savings, unquote. We should add the condition that savings and contingent funds shall not be used to augment the budget for professional services and for advertising agencies. Recommendation number 3. I urge the COMELEC to discharge its constitutional duty to, quote, recommend to the Congress effective measures to minimize election spending, unquote. Gentlemen of the COMELEC, where is your political will? In effect, you people in the COMELEC have to assume responsibility for the premature campaigning of these cabinet candidates because of your ruling on my petition, which I have elevated to the Supreme Court. Binigyan na kayo sana ng pagkakataon na mahinto na ito, hindi pa nag-umpisa. Ayaw nyo. Why so timorous? With the avalanche of cabinet infomercials, it has now become clear to the public that by the refusal by the COMELEC to stop premature campaigning on the basis of a technicality, COMELEC opened the way to a slippery slope. Recommendation number 4. I urge the COA disallow all advertising expenses and demand that executive officials concerned should return to the government the money they used for their advertisements. Ibalik nila ang pera ng taong bayan. Ipamigay natin sa pantawid pamilya. Recommendation number 5. I urge Channel 2 under its Boto Mo, Ipatrol Mo campaign, Channel 7 under its own election watchdog crusade, all other media, and all NGOs dedicated to honest and clean elections to file a complaint with the COMELEC for this election offense against the executive officials I have mentioned and others doing the same. If COMELEC fails to act on a citizen complaint within 4 months from filing, I urge the NGOs to file the complaints with the state prosecutor or the Justice Department. Recommendation number 6, I demand that the press secretary, as head of the communications group in the office of the president, should discharge his legal duty by directing all cabinet candidates to stop their information immediately. Executive Order number 511 dated 206 creates the communications group and requires it to discharge the function of supervision of public information activities, including advertisements. Yan ang katungkulan ng press secretary ayon dito sa executive order na ito. Anong ginagawa niya? Kung hindi niya kaya ang mga cabinet members, di sabihin niya sa Pangulo para mapalitan siya. At ang Pangulo naman sana ay sapituhin niya ang lahat ng cabinet members na ito. Dahil sa halip na tulungan sana siya as her official family, nagdadagdag lang ng problema sa kanya.